Hey, stressed out? Life got you down? Need a way to unwind? Well, in life there are many coping mechanisms, and heck, you could argue that everything we do is just a response to trauma, and all media just serves as a distraction from the monolithic terror of our own existence and mortality. But that isn't the scope of this video. No, friends, it is true there are many different types of coping mechanisms, but it is also true that some of these coping mechanisms are healthier than others. From my personal experience, the act of listening to music is one of the healthier ways to unwind. Here's 5 of my favorites. Can't say it's super unpredictable of me to choose a Boards of Canada release right out the gate, but I have to indulge myself. I'm choosing this 4-track EP because out of all the releases, this is the one that I find myself putting on the most. But wait, Seasong, you did a 48-minute video on Music is the Right to Children. How could that possibly not be your most played BOC record? Great question. And honestly, I can't say that In a Beautiful Place Out in the Country is my definitive favorite release. It changes minute by minute in some instances. But I do know that the swirling pad sounds and drum grooves on this release are quintessential. If I had to pick out 2 moments from this album that completely obliterate me, one would have to be in Kid for Today when the synth bell lead finally comes in. That's a top 10 BOC moment for me. The other would have to be in the title track, when the drums cut out around the 3-minute and 15-second mark when we're left with the vocoded mantra, synth bass, and synth pad. The way the reverb washes over the vocal sample is just absolute magic. It's probably the most divine sounding reverb I've ever heard. There isn't a single bad track on this EP. Every song acts like an integral part of a 4-course sonic feast. The best way I can describe what this album sounds like is the literal sound of the universe breathing. I can conjure up images of laying wrapped up in wool blankets on the deck of a ship looking up at the stars as you rock gently back and forth on the sea. Requiem for Dying Mothers is easily top 10 greatest ambient compositions. It's right up there with Brian Eno's On Land. It sounds like your soul leaving your body and you being perfectly okay with it. This album's length also adds to the detoxifying effect. Coming in at just over 2 hours, it completely surrounds you with passage after passage of tidal swells of strings and abstract instrumentation. There are moments throughout the album where I feel like I'm a huge whale floating in a vast blue ether. If you're the type to meditate, I suggest you put this on and let the sound become the breath in your lungs, slowly inhaling and exhaling until you become one with the vibration of all things, or something like that. Finding out this album was heavily influenced by Wolfgang Voigt's teenage experiences with LSD while wandering around the Black Forests of Germany makes total sense. The first track sounds like a warped collage of boreal field recordings and singing crickets. Typically, when I think of music I'd put in a forest playlist, I'd include artists like Fleet Foxes or Nick Drake, who sort of evoke a folksy acoustic guitar type vibe. I usually wouldn't think minimalist techno. However, this album just oozes a sort of leafy naturalism that is typically only associated with live instruments, and does so well that it's almost like Gas is playing with the frequencies and timbres as if he was just playing a single instrument. Though I love all the tracks, Pop 4 has to be the pinnacle of this style of music. It's the type of track that on first listen might sound like nothing changes for 10 minutes, but let me tell you, by the 137th listen, you'll think you're having auditory hallucinations. The whole album works in a similar manner. You could spend months just trying to digest all the textures and sounds found on this thing. Some might consider this an odd choice for a list that's supposed to be calming, but to me, this is definitely some of Leland Kirby's most relaxed work. Everywhere at the End of Time might be a haunted time machine that doubles as an Alzheimer's simulator, but an empty bliss beyond this world truly does live up to its title. Rather than traumatizing you with the idea of impending memory loss, an empty bliss lets you revel in nostalgic daydreaming of past lives. It makes me think of walking around an old arts and crafts style neighborhood lit by acorn street lamps during the glow of summer twilight. Nostalgic yearning isn't the only emotion felt through this album. Tracks like The Sublime is Disappointingly Elusive have an incredibly romantic quality to them. This track in particular feels like a moment lifted from a classic Hollywood romance where the lead man finally kisses the romantic interest with cathartic passion. This album also has some serious earworms. I randomly found myself singing the main melody of Camaraderie at arm's length, almost forgetting where it was from. Let's just get this out of the way from the beginning. Substrata is easily top 5 ambient albums ever, period. It's up there with Music for Airports and selected ambient works. Cobresia is easily top 5 most beautiful ambient compositions of all time. It's the musical equivalent of being carried by Valkyries to the halls of Valhalla after your hero's death on the battlefield. Norse imagery works quite well with this album, as Biosphere is in fact a Norwegian. The album was recorded in the town of Tromsø, which is actually the northernmost town on Earth that hosts a university, botanical garden, and planetarium. It sort of explains how this album perfectly encapsulates the snowy winterscape of the Arctic and Antarctic. Right from the beginning, we get the sample of a plane flying overhead, and it feels as though it might be the first time our album's protagonist has seen or heard any sign of human life for the past weeks or even months. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there are definitely some spooky tracks on this joint. I'd be hard-pressed to find someone whose first reaction to Sphere of No Form isn't to completely reel back in horror. But wait, Seasong, I thought you said this was a list of albums that calmed you. Well, my sweet summer child, I didn't say there were albums I fell asleep to. Sometimes you need a good jump scare to appreciate how calming the rest of the album is. Comment below which are your go-to Detox albums.